This conference will now be recorded.
In last session, we were discussing about the variables, a list of variables, the variables of type list. So just to create a VPC with the multiple subnets, we have defined a variables in such a way that I have defined a variable of type string with the name called VPC CIDR. This is the variable name. Variable name is VPC CIDR. Type of the variable is this. This is the default value. And variable name is a public subnet CIDRs, public subnet CIDRs, public subnet CIDRs. The variable type is list of strings. This is like a list of sequenced values, a group of sequenced values of same type. So list of strings. This is the default values we have assigned. And a variable of type private subnet variable, the name is private subnet CIDRs. The type of the variable is list of strings, and the default values are this. And there is a variable type called map of strings, key value pairs, key value. So this is the default value for this variable name. Common tags is the variable name. The type of the variable is map of strings. It's a key value pairs. It's a collection of key value pairs, map. So key name is also a key, type is also string, value type is also string. So these are the default values. And there is a variable of type boolean. So this is the variable name, whether I want to enable DNS support for the public subnets, whether I don't want to enable the DNS supports for private subnets, public subnets. We have defined the variable. The default value I have assigned true, and a list of availability zones. Under which availability zones I want to create this VPC, I have defined that also. The subnets under which availability zones I have to create, that also I have defined as a list of strings. And the region also I have defined as a variable. These variables we are using in many of our Terraform configurations. The variables can be referred in the provider block also, guys. In the provider block also you can refer the variable. You can refer the variable in a provider block, but you cannot refer the variable in Terraform block. In Terraform block you can't refer any variable, but in the provider block also we can refer variable. Instead of hard coding the region in which my resources has to be created, I am referring this also as a variable, but there is a default value. Even though I have not assigning a value to this variable, since I have defined the default value, this will be taken. If required, I can pass different value also. And in the main resources, I am trying to create a VPC. The CIDR block, instead of hard coding, I am referring from the variable. Whether do we want to enable DNS host names, that DNS host names for this VPC, I have referring that also from this variable. The common tags, whatever I wanted to assign, that common tags also I am referring from the variables. And using merge function, there is one function called merge. So I can use merge function to merge maps, two different maps I can merge. So this map is coming from variable, and I am merging one more also. It will return the common tags plus this individual tags will be merged and returned. And when I am creating a subnet, public subnets, I am using a meta argument called count. I am using a meta argument called count. How many subnets has to be created? I am getting the counter based on the length of the list. So in variables block, in variable we have defined a variable of type list. So if I am giving list of 3 CIDRs for that variable, the count will be 3. If I am giving 2 CIDRs for that list, count will be 2. And the CIDR block, I am getting again the specific value from that list, specific indexed value from that list. using one more function. There is one function called element, and I am passing a list to that element function, and from what index I want to get the element. So for the first time, the index will be 0. We will be getting the CIDR of first, and second time, second CIDR in this list will be getting like that. Under which availability zone also I want to create, I am getting the availability zone name also by using this element function by passing a availability zone list and index. So as I told already in the last class, even though you go with the default values, there are two CIDRs. So this length count length becomes two public subnets will be created. One time this will be the value of that CIDR, if even though you go with the default values. Second time the CIDR value will be another, even though you go with the default values. And it will be created, first subnet will be created in this availability zone, second subnet will be created in this availability zone. Similarly private subnets I am doing same thing. And the tags, common tags, and I'm adding specific tags also to those resources. And we are creating a route table, we are creating IGW, we are creating a route table, we are creating IGW, and we are creating a NAT gateways. So here, when we are creating a NAT gateway, we are creating NAT gateway in each public subnet. So count how many NAT gateways to be created, count 2. So this length of the CIDRs will be given 2. And allocation ID, basically we need one elastic IP. So here we are creating a resource of type elastic IP. So here also we created two elastic IPs. We are referencing that resource ID, whatever resource we have created here, that elastic IP, we are referencing that resource ID also, something like this. Since here two two elastic IPs are created, so for the first time, element of resource type, this local name, and we are giving star.id like that, star.id and count.index. So for the first time, the first elastic IP ID will be returned. Second time, the second elastic IP ID will be returned. Same here also, subnet ID. So element of subnet, AWS subnet, the public subnets dot star.id index. So there are there will be two times this NAT gateway will be created. Two times NAT gateway will be created like that. So this is what we have discussed. Even though I go with the default values, it will be created. Let's say I want to make this code reusable. I want to make this code reusable or composable. What I can do, I can define a variable definition files like this. So in a separate file, variable definition file, we can assign the values to this variable. So here I was saying for dev, I want to create a VPC for dev environment. Let's say I'm saying something like this, dev VPC CIDR. I mean to say VPC CIDR, this value, public subnet CIDRs, subset of those VPC CIDRs, private subnet CIDRs, availability zones, 1B and 1C like that. Even if I use this values file, the Terraform configurations is going to use these values in order to create a resources. Suppose if I use this values file, for prod TF-vars, so VPC will be created with this CIDR. Now how many public subnets, how many private subnets, in how many availability zones it will be created, if you see, if I use these values. Three. Now if required, you can customize your common tags also. In the common tags, whatever I have added, right? The common tags I have told environment dev, but let's say here what I can say in this prod, I can say common tags. It's a map. It's a map. What you can say? Something like this. Environment also you can change if required. Environment also you can change if required. Let's say something like this. Something like this. You can change the values also. Now, since this is not the terraform.tf vars file, is Terraform is going to load this file automatically as per the variable precedence? Guys, is this variable definitions file will be automatically loaded? You guys attended variables, right? No. But how can I use this variable file? Suppose I want to create a infrastructure using this values now. How can I use these values? At command line. At command line option hyphen var or hyphen var hyphen file. Hyphen var hyphen file. So let me go to this. Now Terraform, I'll say plan hyphen var hyphen file prod dot tf vars like that. Prod dot tf vars like that. I am using just planning. Just planning. I have not applied. If you see, it is saying 24 resources to be added like that. 24 resources to be added like that. It is showing. If I have to apply, I can apply. Terraform apply. Let me apply. Before applying, let me go to my cloud account and let me show nothing is there. As of now, if you see in my Mumbai region, I don't have any VPC except this default VPC. We don't have any subnets except the default VPC subnets. We don't have any NAT gateways like that. Now let me run something like this. With this values file, let me apply. Let me apply. So it is getting created resources in that, right? Let's wait. Let's wait for all these things to be created. I'll go and show in the console. Explicitly, if you have to specify the dependency, you can specify depends on But now I have not recommended, but I have not specified, but it will still create. By the time the NAT gateway is created, right? The IGW might have been already created, but they have recommended, but still it is not going to fail, it will work. They recommended, but I have not used, but still it is going to create. But they have recommended to specify that depends on IGW. If you see the documentation, right? Terraform, this documentation, AWS provider Terraform. If you go to this documentation, they are giving all these things for IGW, for this elastic IP. But for NAT instance, what they're saying for AWS NAT instance, if you go to VPC, they're saying this should be depends on something like this. But if you have to specify, otherwise still it is creating. They're recommending, but I have not specified, but it is created. Total 24 resources has been created. If I go to my AWS console, if I go to VPC, now I can see the VPC. And if you see the tags also, as per my values, is that tag is taken from that vars definition file, variable definition file, the environment protection like that. Here I have given common tags. These are overriding the default values we already discussed. Now if you see VPC ADR is this as per this. And if I go to subnets, how many subnets has been created for that VPC, you can see there are 3 public subnets, 3 private subnets, and in 1A, 1B, 1C, like that. And there is a route tables as per my requirement. I have created a one public route table, and all the 3 public subnets are associated with same route table, and 3 private route tables, each having its own NAT route, to the NAT instance, and the respective subnet is associated like this. There are 3 elastic IPs for each NAT instance, one elastic IP, and there are 3 NAT gateways, 1A, 1B, 1C. There are 3 NAT gateways. So if you see, is my code reusable? Is my code composable? Now let me destroy this one. But understand one thing, since it is maintaining a single state file, since it is maintaining a single state file, you might be thinking, sir, I want to create a Terraform resources for dev, but in the background it is using single state file, same state file. Do you think it will create the resources if I say Terraform apply, if I say dev.tfvars, what will happen? In the background there is a single state file. There is a single state file. There is only one state file. It is not using multiple state file for each environment you want to use. It is having only single state file. So it will compare the current state, the desired state with this value. You might be expecting, I want to create a VPC for dev, but is it going to destroy the existing VPC and create a new VPC if I run like this again? Let me show the Terraform plan. Let me show Terraform plan. You might be thinking you need to create a VPC for dev using this values file, but in the background there is a single state file. In the background there is a single state file. In the background there is a single state file. What it is saying, if you see, it is saying I need to destroy 21 resources, 14 to add, 3 to change, like that, because it is going to destroy the existing resources and it is going to create a new resources because the values got modified. The desired state and current state is not matching. But if you have to reuse your infrastructure resources, your Terraform configurations for multiple environments, there are other ways. There is two ways. One is workspace. In Terraform there is something called workspace. Terraform workspace, you can use Terraform workspace, or you can use the remote backend such as S3 bucket or something else. In when you are using remote backend, for each environment you can have a separate state file. You can give the state file name also. So for each environment you can maintain a separate state file in the remote backend, that S3 bucket, or you can use workspaces. So you can use workspaces also. Let me, if I run like this, you might be thinking, I'm going to get another VPC for dev like that. You might be thinking I'm going to get another VPC for dev like that. But that is not the case. That is not the case. Let me show that. Let me add common tags for this also. You can understand. Let me apply this. Let me plan this. It will show something like this because it is going to replace the existing resources because the values are getting changed. Now I am using dev values. So it is trying to compare the current state with the desired state. But it is not using different states for environment based. So it is saying I need to delete this. It can do in place upgrade. This will do the in place upgrade. This one will destroy. This minus and plus symbol indicates replacement. Now the NAT will be destroyed. This NAT IP will be destroyed. This IGW, it is saying in place upgrade, but this has to be replaced because altogether a different values I am using. Let me apply like this. Let me apply. You might be thinking you may get another VPC. You might be getting another VPC. But in the background, there is a single state file. If you see your code, there is only one state file. It is comparing the desired state with current state using that values using that state file. And the differences, it is evaluating based on this state file. So if you have to reuse the same Terraform configurations for multiple environments, there are various concepts. One concept you can use workspace, Terraform workspace, and one more concept you can use remote backend. In the remote backend, you can maintain the state file for different environments, different state file. But locally, there is only one state file, the default state file. In locally also, you can maintain multiple state files using workspace. I will explain that workspace concept. Let's wait. We'll discuss workspace concept now. Let's wait for this to be completed. But Terraform itself is not recommending workspace, guys. Terraform itself is not recommending workspace. So since the concept came, I thought of explaining workspace, but Terraform itself is not recommending to use workspace. Terraform is recommended to go with remote state files to maintain the state in the remote backends like S3 buckets. So anyhow, we will discuss the remote state file in the future sessions. But since the concept came, I thought of explaining workspace also. Now, if you see, you are expecting another VPC to be created for dev environment, but is it destroying the existing VPC and creating a new VPC? Because you are passing different values, but it is using the same state file in the background. Is everyone clear? What is the problem? If you are trying to use the same Terraform configurations with the different values for creating multiple environments without workspace concept or without remote state file concept, is everyone clear what is the problem now? Is everyone clear?
Sir, I have one question here. Uh, you are using the same variable file in the prod and as well as the dev environment, the dev file. But
Mm-hmm.
here in the dev, we have created 14 resources, but in production file, they have created 24 resources. Like, what is the difference? These things.
Differences because the number of values I am passing, right? Here, you see.
Okay, here we are
You see.
using the 3 subnets.
Yeah. And here?
For 2. 2 and 2, 4.
Okay.
Good. Thank you,
You
sir.
got the why it is creating three subnets. Now you clear, right? Why not
Now,
clear?
thank you.
That is what the use of reusing the code. Do not repeat yourself. You have to dry. There is a principle called dry. Do not repeat yourself. You should not duplicate your code or your resources. You can use variables and you can pass these variables at a different runtime also, or variable auto whereas all those things we already discussed. Right? But now the problem, you can't reuse this code for creating a, you can't reuse this Terraform configurations for creating a resources for multiple environments. You are not able to reuse. Your whole purpose is you want to reuse, but you are using a different value later. Is it destroying the existing resources and creating a new resources as per that new values file? Yes, because in the background, it is using only one Terraform state file, and in the it is comparing your values, your resources with the current state, and it is trying to update the existing resources only. But to overcome this one, there is a concept called workspace in Terraform. You need to create a workspaces, and you can switch to select particular workspace, and you can run your Terraform plan, Terraform apply command by switching to particular workspace. Or you can use the remote backend, S3 backend, where you can maintain the state file for different environment, different state files you can maintain. So let's wait this to be destroyed and recreated. Modules also same, but even though you are using modules, you need to maintain the Terraform state separately. What is modules? It is a reusable code. It is again reusable code, but again without using different states, somehow you are not managing the different state file, even though there is of no use of module. What is module? Basically all your VPC related code you will kept in a separate folder. That's it, right? This resources, this variable file, this main.tf, this variable.tf file you will kept in a separate folder, and in your one more folder you are just going to use that module, but the underlying problem remains same. Let's wait for that module to come, but now understand what is this. We should use that depends on somehow, otherwise it is not able to destroy. This is deleted. Subnet is also deleted. VPC is not able to delete. It has not deleted VPC. It has deleted. It has not deleted IGW. So it has deleted everything except IGW and this main route table. This main route table, IGW, and VPC is not able to delete. We should specify that it depends on, maybe we should specify that depends on, so that it will delete in a proper order. So anyhow, let me delete. Let me again run this. If see, let's see, it can destroy that existing VPC and create a new VPC as per that CIDR. Now VPC has to be replaced. So better to add this depends on as per that as per this right. Due to this only it is not able to properly destroy whatever has been created. Creation has worked, but destroying was not happening. So it is better to add when you are creating a NAT gateways. You can add that it depends on this internet gateway, on this internet gateway. But anyhow, let's destroy. If it is not able to destroy, we will manually destroy and we will demonstrate that one. The documentation is very, very important, guys. So they know what needs to be, what is depends on others, like that. Now when creating it is working, but when I am destroying, it is not able to destroy because it was not able to properly destroy the resources in an order. So this is causing the problem, and Terraform is not able to destroy those resources. To create other resources. Now meantime, let it, if it is not able to destroy, we will manually destroy, but I have added this one. So let me explain meantime workspace in Terraform. So if you read this documentation, workspaces in Terraform, there is something called workspace. So what is this workspace? Why do we need workspace? If you see, workspaces in a Terraform refers to separate instance of the state data, separate instances of the state data inside the same Terraform working directory. So workspaces in Terraform CLI refers to a separate state file inside the same Terraform working directory. So Terraform relies on the state to associate resources with real objects. When you run the same configuration multiple times with separate state data, Terraform can manage multiple sets of non-overlapping resources. Workspaces can be useful. Workspaces can be useful for a specific use cases. Specific use cases. What is that use case? You can create a multiple working directories to maintain multiple instances of the configuration with completely separate state data, separate state file. So same Terraform configuration, but it will use separate state file in the same working directory. It will create a separate state file for each workspace. So you can use this Terraform workspaces concept if you want to reuse the same Terraform configuration, same set of resources to be created for multiple environments. You can create a workspace. You can create a workspace and you need to switch to that workspace and run your Terraform commands so that it will use the different state file, different state file. So Terraform workspace is used. Basically, workspaces in a Terraform refers to the separate instances of state file stored inside the same Terraform working directory. Workspaces will be useful. Workspaces will be helpful for some use cases, as I told, like creating a same resources using same configurations for multiple environments. You can use workspace, but they are saying we are recommending using alternative approaches for complex deployments rather than this workspace concept. Terraform itself is not recommending workspaces concept. Instead of creating a workspaces in the CLI, you can use lot of other components, different backend like S3 backend or some other backend to maintain the state file, multiple state file for different environments. They are recommending to go with the remote backend like S3, like that. Remote backend, remote state or remote backend we call it. Remote state or remote backend we call it. For now, let me use workspace in this scenario. Let me use workspace for this scenario. How to create a workspace locally and how to use that workspace locally. Let me do that. This is the problem. Let me, for time being, let me delete this manually. Terraform is not able to delete. Terraform is not able to destroy. Let me delete this manually. Now I have added this depends on. To fix that problem, I have added this depends on. This NAT gateways is depends on IGW, like that I have added. And let me add elastic IP also VPC specific. Elastic IP is also VPC specific. Let me add these two. Now let me show that. Let me show that. Now Terraform plan or Terraform apply. Terraform plan or Terraform apply. Using this file, if you see, it will try to compare the current state with this desired state. Now dev.tf vars file I'm using. For now, old resources has been destroyed. Old resources has been destroyed manually. Also, I have deleted. Now it is going to create these many resources. Now, if I apply this, it will create resources as per this values file. And again, if I apply with a different values file, it will delete the. Let me show that. It will delete these current resources and it will create a new resources with that values file. But to overcome this problem, we can use a workspace concept. You can use a workspace concept. So instead of running like this, you can create a workspaces in Terraform. Even though you don't create a workspace, this is the command. This is the command to use workspace. Terraform workspace show. Even though we have not created a workspace, by default there is a workspace called a default workspace. You can see we have not created any workspace in this Terraform CLI, but there is a default workspace called, the name itself is default workspace. It is going to use this workspace, but if required, you can create a new workspaces using some command. You have some commands. Terraform workspace new, create a new workspace. To select that workspace, you can use a Terraform workspace select. To list how many workspaces are there, you can use the list command like that. Now as of now we don't have any workspaces except a default. As of now we don't have any workspaces except a default. What you can do, you can create a workspace like this. Create Terraform workspace new dev, like this. Terraform workspace new prod, like this. The moment you create a workspace like this, The moment you create a workspace like this, you got a folder. There are three workspaces: default workspace, dev workspace, prod workspace. The moment I execute Terraform workspace new, this is the workspace name, new prod, this is the workspace name. The moment I execute that one, you see there is one folder like this got created. There is one folder like this created with this name terraform.tf state.d. One folder got created. Within that folder, there is a one more folder called dev, one more folder called prod. The folders got created like this. One more folder got created, terraform.tf state.d. Within that, there is one folder for dev, one folder for prod, like that. Now you can select the workspace. You can select the workspace like this, Terraform workspace. You can see star represents this is the correct selected workspace. Suppose you want to switch to different workspace, you can say Terraform select dev. Now you switch to this workspace. Now you can run something like this, Terraform plan with this var files. So it is going to look this Terraform command, this Terraform plan, Terraform apply, that Terraform destroy commands is going to look for a state file. It is going to look for a state file. It is going to use the state file which is there in this folder. As of now, there is no state. As of now, there is no state. Just now I created a workspace. There is no state file. What it will think, is it going to consider this resource to be created? Whatever variables we are passing, as per that, is it going to consider these resources to be created like that? Yes. Now let me apply. Let me apply. Let me apply. Now it is using this var file, but same configuration, same Terraform. This same Terraform configurations is used with that var file, but it is going to generate the state file in this workspace. Now you can see it is creating a resources and it is generating the state file here under this workspace. Under this workspace. Now I want to create a same same resources, same Terraform resources in for prod environment using prod values file. Can I switch the workspace to prod, and can I run Terraform apply, Terraform destroy, Terraform plan like that by switching to prod workspace, so that it will use the state file from that workspace? Are you guys understood what I am trying to say? Now I have switched, I have selected a profile, workspace called dev, and I am using Terraform plan, Terraform destroy, Terraform apply on that workspace. And the Terraform is using that workspace to maintain the state file. Now, if I switch to prod workspace and if I say Terraform plan, Terraform apply, in that prod workspace, there is no state file as of now. It will create first, then it is going to compare whenever you are running, whenever you are making any changes. So let me show that. First, let this will be created. Let this get created. But Terraform itself is not recommending workspace to be used. They are recommending to use a different. There is something called remote backend to maintain the state file, different state files for different environments in a remote backend instead of local backend. Because the problem here is, the switching between the workspaces is complex. Switching between the workspaces is complex, right? You need to make sure you switch to the correct workspace before you are running. Otherwise, you are expecting something, you will mess up, right? Suppose you are using prod tf var files from dev workspace. Again, it will cause the problem, right? So now let me show that. Now the resources has been created in AWS. The resources has been created in AWS. The VPC with this CIDR, the subnets, 4 subnets as per that values, NAT instances like that, it is created. NAT instances like that, it is created. NAT instances like that, it is created. but there is a limitation for elastic IPs also. There is a limitations for elastic IPs also. Let me see how many elastic IPs can be created. If I try to create more elastic IPs, again it's a problem. AWS will not allow. Let me go to EC2 limits only. This is under EC2 limits only. Let me go to EC2 limits only. So you can see how many elastic IPs can be created. Maximum 5. If required, you need to increase the quota. But for now, I have only created. 2. But even though I try to create 3 more, it should be fine. Now let me show that. Now I can switch the workspace now. Suppose I want to create a resources for prod environment. Now currently I am in dev workspace. Now if I run this n number of times with same values without modifying values or without modifying your resources, no change, because now this is going to use that state file from this workspace. Now without modifying anything in the values file or without modifying anything in your Terraform configuration, if I run this n number of times, fine. It is saying 0 to add, 0 to destroy, 0 to change it, like that. But if I am changing some values in that devvars, let's say I'm making something else. Let's say I'm changing some tags. So tags, no need to do in place, no need to destroy and delete, no need to destroy and create. So if I say Terraform plan or Terraform apply, same workspace, I'm executing Terraform plan. It is going to compare the resources using the state file which is part of that workspace. Now it is going to use this state file. It is going to compare the current resources with your desired resources. Now it is saying it needs to do update in place, because I have just updated the tags only. It is saying all these things has to be updated like that. Now if I apply also, fine. If I apply, it is using this state file, the state file which is part of this workspace, which is used, and it is comparing the current state with the desired state, and it is making any changes if you are doing. And again it is saying, do you want to perform these actions in workspace dev? Right? Because I am in the dev workspace. Now let's say I want to create a same infrastructure, I mean to say the same with same configurations, I want to create an infrastructure for prod environment. What I can do, I can switch to the prod workspace. First, something like this: Terraform workspace, select prod. Now we switch to the prod workspace. Now I can say Terraform plan or Terraform apply on this prod values. But even though same configurations, same Terraform configurations, different values, but I switch to different workspace. Now, as of now, do you have any state file? Because for the first time we are running Terraform apply, Terraform plan here. Do you have any state file in the prod workspace? No. So as of now, no. So it will consider it may need to create these many resources like that. Now if you see, it will say it has to create 24 resources or something like that. Now if I apply, is it destroying existing resources which you created for dev environment using that dev workspace? If you see, no. So it is using a state file from a different workspace, from this workspace state file is used. As of now, there is no resources. It is going to create a state file and it will add the resources information in the state file. Now it will create a resources as per that values. But if you want to something like this, you can use. If you have to manage Terraform resources, you want to create a Terraform resources in multiple environment, you can use a workspace concept here. Same configuration by using a workspaces, you can manage the Terraform resources for multiple environments using same configuration by using workspace, by switching to the workspace. But Terraform itself is not recommending a workspace. They are alternatively, they are saying go with the remote backend. Go with remote backend like that. For complex use cases, this Terraform workspace is not suggestible. Go with remote backends and remote, I mean to say modules concept like that. Is everyone clear? What is workspace? Terraform workspace refers to a multiple state file. Workspaces in Terraform CLI refer to the separate state file inside the same working directory. Same working directory. So Terraform relies on the state. Terraform relies on the state to associate resources with real world object. When you run the same configuration multiple times with separate data, separate state file, when you run the same configuration with multiple times with separate state data, Terraform can manage multiple sets of non-overlapping resources. Workspaces will be useful for a specific use cases, but they are not required to use the Terraform CLI. They are saying they are recommending use alternative approach for complex deployment. So how to manage workspaces via CLI? Every Terraform working directory at least starts with one workspace named default. Even though you have not created a workspace, Terraform internally will create one workspace called default. You can use this Terraform workspace list to list the workspaces. To add a new workspace, you can use this one. To delete, you can use this one. To switch this one, like that. When you provision the infrastructure in each workspace, you usually need to manually specify the different input variables. That's what we are doing. When you provision the infrastructure in each workspace, you need to provide the values, different input variables to each workspace like that. So you can use multiple working directories to maintain the multiple configurations with separate state file. But using this workspace, I can using this workspace, I can reuse my Terraform configurations. Using this workspace, I can reuse same Terraform configurations for managing multiple environments by using this workspace concept. There are various other options also. Instead of workspace. Instead of workspace, there are alternative to workspace like remote backend. So they are saying when not to use multiple workspaces. So where workspaces will let you to quickly switch between multiple instances of single configuration within single backend. But they are not designed to solve all the problems. When we are using Terraform to manage larger systems, you should create a separate Terraform configurations that corresponding to your architecture, and you can go with the separate options. This makes a lot of complexity. This workspace is lot of complexity in a larger infrastructure. You need to switch to workspace carefully. You need to use proper values files carefully. Otherwise, again, it will be a mess up. So that's why there are a lot of alternatives to workspace. Now, if you see 24 resources has been created. If I go to cloud also, can I see dev, the VPC which I am expecting for dev, the VPC which I am expecting for prod also. Now you can see with this CIDR1 VPC is there, the tags development demo VPC like that, another VPC, this CIDR, the tags production like this, and also subnets for the prod VPC 5, 6 subnets, for dev VPC 3 subnets like that. and also all these NAT gateways. Now, if you make any changes to this values file, if you make any changes to this value file, just I'm making the tags only. I'm just updating the tags only. If I'm making any changes to this value file, and again, if I apply, it is going to use the state file in that workspace. It is going to use the state file in that workspace, and it is going to compare the current state with the desired state. If there are any changes, it is going to make the changes. Existing other workspace resources are not going to be affected. Other workspace resources are not going to be affected. Now, if I destroy from this workspace, you can see what is the current workspace. Terraform workspace list. You can see our Terraform workspace show the prod workspace. Now, if I execute Terraform destroy, it is going to destroy whatever resources has been created from this workspace. That information is maintained in the state file. Whatever resources are there in the state file, these resources gets destroyed. Prod related resources will be destroyed. You change the CIDR, nothing will stop you. You update the CIDR, who will now no one will stop you. You update the CIDR, but make sure what you are doing. If you are updating the CIDR, is that VPC will be destroyed and recreated. It can't do in place update, right? The AWS concept, it can't do in place update, so it will destroy the resource and it will create a new VPC. And make sure you are giving a CIDRs also subset of VPC CIDR. I am just changing this value to show how it works. You change this VPC CIDR, what will happen? The existing VPC will be deleted and new VPC will be created because it can't do the in-place update. And make sure you are giving the subnet CIDRs also subset of your VPC CIDR. Now I have just executed Terraform destroy to destroy whatever resources has been created for that environment from using that workspace. So sometimes in the interviews also they are going to ask this workspace. So is everyone clear what is Terraform workspace? How Terraform workspace will work? You need to create workspace, you need to switch to workspace, and you can run the Terraform commands. The workspace is going to, each workspace is going to have its own state file in the same working directory. Within the same working directory, Terraform working directory, it will have a multiple state files for each workspace. Any question, any confusion on these workspaces, whatever has been discussed today? Now, since I have given that depends on, it is properly destroyed. It is properly destroyed since we use depends on. Now, if I go to my infrastructure, only that whatever VPC I have created using that prod workspace, that is only deleted. Do I still have another VPC which is created for dev environment using dev workspace like that? I have still this VPC. I still have a subnets for that dev environment VPC. I still have a NAT gateways for that dev VPC because I have executed Terraform destroy from prod workspace. Now, if I want to make any changes, right? If I have to make any changes to dev, I need to change the values and I have to switch to that workspace and run the command. If I have to destroy also, first I need to switch to that workspace. I need to switch to that workspace. If the moment I switch to that workspace, when I am running any Terraform command, when I am running any Terraform command like Terraform plan, Terraform apply, Terraform plan, Terraform apply. So it is going to use the state file from this profile. I mean, say this workspace. Now prod workspace, everything cleaned up. We destroyed because we don't have any resources. We destroyed. So it is like this. Now I switch to dev workspace. Now if I say Terraform plan with the dev files, if there are no changes in the values and the actual configuration, it will say nothing to do. No resources to be added, no resources to be destroyed, no resources to be updated, like that. 0 to add, 0 to change, 0 to destroy. Now because it is comparing the desired state with this current state from this state file. Now if I execute Terraform destroy here, it is going to destroy those resources whatever has been created from that workspace. Terraform destroy. Now this also getting destroyed. Whatever has been created using this workspace also going to be destroyed. So can I use workspace concept to reuse same Terraform configurations to manage resources for multiple environments by switching to the different workspaces, so that the Terraform will maintain the state file for each workspace, different state file. So try to practice whatever has been discussed. Tomorrow I'll continue. I'm destroying once our practice is done. Once my practice is done, I'm destroying. So once practice this one, tomorrow I'm going to discuss about output variables also, and we will discuss about map input variables, map also. Some other use case I'll take. Input variables, map. Tomorrow I'll take simple use case to understand map, to understand output variable. I'll take very simple use cases. But last 3-4 sessions I have taken very advanced use case, like creating a VPC with a list of variables, using functions in the resource blocks, and we discussed workspace also today. Try to go through this and practice. Tomorrow I'll start again variables, input variables, map type, and also we'll discuss about output variables. Once this is done, we have a lot of topics. We need to discuss about functions, functions, and we need to discuss about provisioners. We need to discuss about modules. Slowly we will understand all those things. That's it for today. Try to practice whatever has been discussed. I'll share this code, updated code, because we missed this one. That was causing the issue when we are destroying. This one causing the issue. Once we added this, depends on is Terraform is able to properly create as well as destroy when we are destroying all the resources. Yes. Did I anything done manually now to destroy? Nothing. Everything got destroyed properly. But suppose you create a EC2 instances under that VPC from a different Terraform configuration, different Terraform module or configuration. You can't delete VPC, and if there are active resources in the VPC, first you need to destroy those resources in the VPC, then you need to destroy VPC. Okay. Thank you guys. That's it for today. I'll continue tomorrow. I'll share this updated code. Practice workspace also, at least play around with workspace. But make sure you are under proper workspace when you are running Terraform plan, Terraform apply, Terraform destroy. You might be thinking you are in a different workspace and expecting to create resources for different environment. Don't work out. Thank you. That's it for today. We'll continue tomorrow.